All right, so we're live. Hello, everyone. You're listening to You Got It with Warrior Woman 91. All right, so everyone, I hope you enjoyed last week's episode. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and send me all your hate mail because it's really my favorite thing ever, and I just love it. So this week we have a never-before-seen or heard-from guest that is making her first appearance on any of my shows today, pro-life advocate Emily Butler. Emily, it's great to have you on.
Well, thank you, Kelly. It's nice to be here.
Very excited to have you on. I've been wanting to have you on for quite some time. So we've got a lot of things to discuss today. This episode, if the audience hasn't already guessed, it's going to revolve around the pro-life question, is it or isn't it a life? So, Emily, a lot of people have heard my story of how I've not been a lifelong pro-lifer. My position has always been more of an out of obligation position. I'm a Christian, so I guess I kind of have to be pro-life. And then that kind of changed when kind of my perception was expanded. So what would your suggestion be if you were confronted with Kelly from the past, who literally needed to be educated from the ground up on this issue?
Well, I think the first thing is having an open discussion about what the procedure actually is. And, you work backwards from sort of the euphemisms that people use, like I'm personally pro-choice, or, it's ending a pregnancy, or it's a clump of cells. And I kind of ask somebody, like, at what point since your conception do you become you? Mm-hmm. And usually most people agree that at some point in the womb, like most people are against like third trimester abortion. Mm-hmm. So then it's working backward and it's saying, okay, so if you're you at 18 weeks, are you not you at 12 weeks? Because like immediately in the moment that you were created, in the moment of fertilization, all of your DNA is established, your gender, your ethnicity, your eye color, all of that's established. And so to eliminate that would be to eliminate you. Like there's never going to be another one of those. So you start off immediately from the moment of fertilization as you. And the question I put to pro-choicers is, at what point is it appropriate to murder you? And I kind of just use harsh language like that. Abortion is, they try to say that it's more like the pregnancy is a process, like how far along are you in this process? Mm-hmm. But it's not really how far along the mother is in the process. It's how far along her baby is. Mm-hmm. And so if we accept that there is a point in the moment that you were created that is an indistinguishable life from any other creation that ever has been or ever will be, can we come to an agreement that that is life?
Mm-hmm. So why do you think so many people fall into this kind of middle ground, I wouldn't do it for myself position, but I couldn't tell other people not to? Because that's the kind of the argument that I get most of the time from people. They just really don't want to touch the issue.
There's a lot of I'm personally pro-life, and so you have to ask them, so what makes being pro-choice not an option for you? Mm-hmm. So I would ask you, Kelly, what makes you personally pro-life? Mm-hmm. Like, why would you never get an abortion?
Right. Well, and yeah, I mean, the problem that I find with people is that they can explain all the different ways. They just don't want to have to go the extra mile to press upon other people their beliefs, because I think, especially in the case of a lot of Christians, they feel like, oh, I'm pushing my religion on somebody else.
Well, here's the thing about like a right. If you believe that it is a right for your child to not be murdered, if you believe that you are murdering a child in the womb, why are you extending that right to yourself and not to others? It's the same kind of thing as if you were saying, I'm personally opposed to slavery, but I couldn't tell anyone else not to own slaves. Mm-hmm. So yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say I agree with that position wholeheartedly. The idea that you can have something that is such a drastic position as, well, I'm personally against slavery, but I couldn't tell my next door neighbor not to do it. It really puts it in perspective.
I mean, the point is if you believe that abortion is the taking of an innocent life. And you believe that to the extent where you believe it for yourself. And if you also believe that we have a right to life, you can't just extend that right to yourself and not to the baby that's growing inside of your neighbor. Mm-hmm. You can't say to your neighbor, it's like murder is okay for you, but it's not okay for me. If you believe that it's murder, then you believe that it's murder for everyone.
So what you're saying is basically you just hate women and you're bigoted and all of that. You want to send us back to the dark ages.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I watched The Handmaid's Tale and I look for tips, on how to overtake our Constitution and turn every woman into a childbearing slave, basically. Yeah. I'm telling you.
That's exactly what I expected. So one thing I just wanted to bring into this whole discussion is this hilarious tweet from I think it was sent out last night from Alyssa Milano, and it's probably my favorite tweet of the month. She's now advocating that women refuse to have sex in order to protest these new abortion laws. Mm-hmm. And isn't that kind of what conservatives have been suggesting since the 70s?
Yeah, I'm glad to see Alyssa Milano is finally taking the Catholic view on sexual relationships, because, the ugly truth of society is that women are kind of the gatekeepers to morality. Yeah. And women don't really want to accept that because they want to put half the responsibility on men. But the truth is that nobody would be going out and having one-night stands and sleeping with random people all through college or all through their 20s if women didn't say that was okay. Like, guys would not be doing that if there were no women to do that with. And, the other side of that is men would have to rape women, which is really not as big of a national crisis as I think Me Too made it out to be. Mm-hmm. But I think the Me Too wave kind of rolled itself into this interesting sort of problem, like a catch-22, because they want to hold men accountable, right? Mm-hmm. But you don't do that without asserting yourself. And the whole premise of the movement is that, and the left is that you should be able to go out and have sex indiscriminately with whoever you want, which means treating somebody else like an object. Like, you're there, you're giving me what I want, and then you're piecing out. Like, I don't need to talk to you. I don't need to have a relationship with you. It's just we both get what we want. Mm-hmm. So women are now mad that men are partaking in that. And they're saying, until you can respect my body, then I don't want to have sex with you. And it's like, okay, great. Well, who do you have sex with that respects your body and respects your person and respects you as a human being who has the capacity to create another human life? Your husband. So it's like if you really want to abstain and teach men that you're worth more than that, then you're literally doing exactly what you said, Kelly, is buying into the conservative philosophy that don't have sex with people who don't respect you or don't value you as a person.
I never expected to hear 1950s morality coming out of Alyssa Milano's Twitter site. It's just kind of incredible, and I've really been enjoying trolling that tweet. I do wonder what is going through her head right now, if she still is living in this. This is a really good idea that I just came up with just tonight, and I figured this out, and or if she actually realizes, oh, maybe I shouldn't have sent out that tweet.
I think that her own logic will lead back to whatever the reason is. Here's the thing, she's kind of a social justice warrior. Mm-hmm. And the thing about social justice warriors that I've learned since the election of Donald Trump is that they have no capacity for self-reflection. It's just doubling down on their current status of victimhood, wherever they fall in the hierarchy. Mm-hmm. And if they can represent someone higher in the hierarchy than themselves, that makes them more valuable as a person. So the answer is Melissa Milano will never realize that she was dumb. She'll never come around to that way of thinking because she still has that social justice mentality of like, I am a woman, therefore I'm a victim, and I'm doubling down on this. And she'll use her own leftist logic to come around to what is a conservative principle. It's a little bit of, backward logic, but
yeah, it is. It is quite stunning, because I do agree with the point that she may come to the conservative idea or the conservative solution or whatever it happens to be, and she will still continue to claim, no, this was my idea. Nobody's ever thought of this before, and this is of the left, and this is the way that we're going to fight back against the patriarchy. And the rest of us will be like, well, yes, and we've been saying this since 1950 something or whatever it happens to be. And she will still sit there and think, no. This was me. This is a great idea from the left, and only the left could come up with this kind of plan. But I just kind of moving on to some of the other internet stuff that we've been dealing with the pro-life movement. There's, of course, the more militant pro-life, or excuse me, pro-abortion advocates that are just, well, for example, you've got Representative Brian Sims running around on the street, actually actively harassing pro-life supporters. I guess, what was your initial reaction to this guy and what he was doing?
I was blown away that he was an elected official. And then as I went through his different social media, like his Instagram and his Facebook, where he's flipping off Mike Pence, it became apparent to me that this is, between this and, like, say, AOC, it feels like it's starting to become a trend. And, like, this is what's trendy for millennials representing, like, electing the represented officials. I think it's really, really, really dangerous to have a civil servant, a public servant, also acting as their own activist. I think that's the beginning of fascism, because they will do things like this in the name of their own activism, and they'll feel validated by it as an elected official. Like, this is what the public has elected me to do, is to point out all of the social justice attacks on the victimhood, basically, the social justice victimhood, and to fight on their behalf. Like, he feels like he's almost an elected superhero, and he's taking out bad guys. Yeah, that's very, very, very dangerous, because that's where you start getting into your own narcissism and your own bureaucracy, apart from what people actually want.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest concerns I had about him was the fact that he is an elected official, and he's supposed to be representing that entire district. He's not supposed to just be representing the LGBTQ segment or pro-abortion segment of that district. He's supposed to be representing the entire district. And so the fact that he's got people that presumably are locals coming by and disagreeing with him, and that he's actively harassing them and, shoving cameras in faces and shouting nasty things at them and shouting for teenagers to be doxxed and all of that. It seems wildly inappropriate for somebody who holds a representative office. It's not even that he holds a government position. It's that he holds an office that he's supposed to be representing a diverse group of people, I guess, is my biggest issue.
He feels publicly validated by his personal activism. That is an incredibly dangerous, slippery slope for where we are as a society, because that is telling people that they can act in their own interest, they can act any way that they want, and if there's no repercussion, if there's no backlash, this is what people elected them to do. And that's where you start to see the fall of typical traditional conservatism or any sort of states' rights or any sort of limited government, because government officials and elected officials will start feeling more empowered to do inappropriate things like this, to be physically engaging their constituents, or at least the constituents of nearby districts, to think that you have that kind of power where you can just live stream yourself harassing somebody, and that's perfectly acceptable. That's really, really dangerous to our Constitution and our state of governmental affairs, if you ask me.
Yeah. I mean, one other thing, let's just kind of playing devil's advocate here. If I'm on the left and if I'm a pro-abortion activist and I see Brian Sims going out and harassing elderly women and teenage girls, do you think that that's kind of that's really the advocate that the left should want representing them on this issue?
I was really surprised that more Democrats didn't come out. And again, this is something else that scared me, was the lack of nobody really rushed to defend him, but nobody really rushed to condemn him either. And I don't think that he's gotten really any condemnation from his fellow Democrats in the state house, as well as any of his campaign backers. Like, nobody's really come out and said anything against him. And that's a little bit scary. Like, why are people afraid to condemn this behavior? Do people actually condone public officials acting in this way? Because I always use this as the flip side. Like, what if that were a conservative harassing anybody pro-choice like that? Like, that would be mainstream media, national news. This was pretty national, but it wasn't like it lasted maybe like a couple days of a news cycle. Like, that would last probably 3 weeks in the news and be continuously referenced up into election year. Yeah. If it was on the flip side.
So there's another concern that I kind of, somebody brought this up to me. I won't mention their name, but it was a guy. And he said, after having heard about, first of all, he was so upset about the incident, he wouldn't watch the video because he thought it would make him too angry. But when he heard about what was actually going on in the video, he said, well, why don't people who are protesting just bring large men with them all the time? And so my concern is that, so maybe that happens. Maybe now female protesters are always bringing large guys with them, and then people like Brian Sims are bringing even larger guys with them, and then things are starting to escalate. I guess that's another concern for me, is just that he's kind of opening the door. Brian Sims is opening the door for, I can come in and harass people, and then, not to say that pro-lifers are necessarily going to come and harass people back, but they're going to come in with bigger guns next time, and then the left will come in. Do you see that escalating, or is that just kind of a unnecessary worry on my part?
I hope the rally that happened on Friday set a good precedent where we will not become bullies. Like, we'll not cower to bullies, and we will not become bullies ourselves. Mm-hmm. So I hope that sent a really strong message to both communities that if you try to harass or dehumanize pro-life advocates, that we won't be silenced. But at the same time, there was nothing out of control in that rally when I think tensions and emotions would have run the highest. Mm-hmm. And I think that diffused a lot on the pro-life side, and also sent a very powerful message to the other side, which is you can't just keep walking all over people as if we're evil. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think I would hope that it doesn't escalate. I would have to imagine that there would have to be several more instances that made national news for things to start to escalate in either direction. But I'm a little less concerned about that at this point.
All right. Well, so we're going to be moving on to kind of our last little topic, but mostly I just wanted to talk about just kind of circling back to what we discussed in the beginning, that kind of we had a little audio issue, so we kind of missed out on some of it. But just the whole, I find that there's just so many people that, again, are sitting on the fence. They don't really have a grasp on the scientific aspect of what abortion actually is or what it does. People hear a lot of euphemisms about, it's just a woman's right to choose. It's just a clump of cells. It's just, something that can be done away with. You're just having a tooth pulled. That's all it really is. What would be your, I don't know, kind of statement to people who are on the fence and need a push to at least go and examine these issues for themselves?
One of the things that's really been sticking with me in the last few weeks is kind of the realization that the patriarchy is actually responsible for the pro-choice side of things. Because I think one thing that Me Too, that a lot of women can really unite on, and one thing that Me Too really exposed, is that rich, powerful men have a very strong tendency to abuse that power. Mm-hmm. And to kind of go along with Alyssa Milano's reverse psychology, twisted logic, if men can buy anything they want, and that includes women, do you think men are going to care about the life that may result as an interaction between him and that woman? And the answer is men, rich, powerful men will donate to pro-choice causes, and they will support pro-choice causes because they have a personal interest in avoiding any personal responsibility. Like, the thing about it is, abortion is not like a women's rights issue. It sends a really powerful message to men that if it's a women's issue, it's a woman's problem. And it helps men escape that responsibility of what it means to procreate with somebody, what it means to have a sexual interaction with somebody. And I think that's a message that reaches a lot of planes. It reaches like both feminist and women power. It reaches both traditional women, family first kind of women alike, where if we really do want to stand up to the patriarchy and we really do want to enforce ourselves as feminists and enforce our bodily autonomy, we have to make men respect us. And this giving them this option where, yeah, I mean, we can have sex and I may get pregnant from that and we may both create a life, but like, that's my decision whether to like kill the kid or keep the kid, and you don't have to worry about anything. So that's kind of like the starting point where I go to. And then I start to talk to people about, okay, when do you think it's actually okay to have an abortion? Do you think, when should it stop? Should it stop at 20 weeks when they can feel pain? Should it stop at 18 weeks when they can hear their mother's voice? I mean, if age is a social construct, like you're no less of a person, you're no less of you as a zygote than you are as an adolescent. It's just how old you are. And so the idea that some powerful man can take your life away, can convince your mother that your life is worthless because he's telling your mom that it's a pro-choice issue, that it's a woman's issue. That to me is like the ultimate, well, screw you, buddy. Like, let's take this back. Like, let's enforce our bodily autonomy and let's enforce respect and love and devotion of our own bodies, because we're way more important and we're way more deserving than that.
It is a good point, because I've had a lot of people screaming at me in my mentions today, mostly about the issues of rape and incest, and how dare you suggest that a woman who has been raped should have to carry her child to term. But why should the rapist, why should the evil man who raped somebody get to determine whether that little girl gets to live or not? It's just,
yeah.
It is a person, and that child, male or female, should not have to pay for the sins of its father. So I think that's a great way to frame it, especially for women who are kind of the pro-female, anti-patriarchy woman. I think that will resonate a lot more than some of the other arguments that are out there. So just for the audience's benefits, I know that Emily is a huge Game of Thrones fan, and I like to throw in, I know we've had a pretty heavy episode today, but just to throw something fun in here, I did want to give Emily the floor and let her also give her passionate advocacy of why you should watch Game of Thrones. Emily, if in 60 seconds you could the show Game of Thrones, what would you tell them?
If I were telling people who had never seen Game of Thrones to watch Game of Thrones, I would say that if you like roller coasters, you would like this show, because the build-ups and the payoffs are so huge and so much fun. It feels like riding a roller coaster after certain episodes. I'm a big proponent of character development. I don't really care about movies that don't have strong content, strong dialogue, characters I really care about. And so when you have all of those things together and like big things happen and your favorite characters can die or they can live, like you feel like you're living in the world with your characters. And to really sit on the edge of your seat and wonder if your favorite character is going to make it or not. And that honest feeling of like, I don't know what's going to happen next, but I know that it's going to be a really good story. Like, even when really sad things happen and really upsetting things happen, you still walk away feeling like, man, that was such a good episode. Like, you're still blown away at the end of every episode. And so that's why people should watch Game of Thrones. But I know that I'm speaking to a very small minority, because it's probably one of the most widely watched television shows in existence. So people who aren't watching and are listening to this, you know, you're already late. Winter's come. There's no hope for you.
All right, everyone. So Emily Butler says go watch Game of Thrones. The question really is whether Kelly will end up watching it eventually, but I do feel like I'm a bit behind the curve, and what's the point at this point? So just to round out the show, I will give a shout out to my next guest, hopefully next week, will be Elliot Hamilton. Give him a follow on Twitter at ElliotRHams. Emily, if there's anybody on Twitter that you wanted to shout out, now's your chance.
Oh, Jacob Airy. He's pretty great.
I think he was my guest not last week, the week before last. So yeah, everybody follow at Real Jacob Airy. He's also a great follow. And like, subscribe, comment. Let me know if you watched Game of Thrones, especially if you watched it based off of what Emily said. And if not, you probably just fail at life. All right. Thank you, Emily, for joining me, and I will see you all on the next episode.
Thanks, Kelly.